Welcome to Global Education Unpacked. Are you guys excited? We're back on air because we have a guest today, and we will explore how global learning takes shape. I cannot talk. It's going to be another one of those days in the classroom, communities, and across the world. I'm your host, Marie Lapidus. I should look in the camera. Hello. The show is recorded at WHCM Radio and produced by Blue Bailey and features our theme music mint by DJ Double Dip. I don't know if you remember him. He was one of our students here, so it's very exciting to have. Yeah. So today I'm delighted to welcome Maham Khan, our Harper College alumna, journalism professional, and I'm the one leading this, and I'm like so nervous because she's so much better at this than I am. Current mass communication professor at Harper College. She recently participated in the, let's get this right, we were told, International Field Seminar to Morocco and Tunisia, which followed 10 months of professional development through the Center of Global Education Engagement's Global Regional Focus Initiative. It's not a trip. It's that.
It's hard work. Let's call it what it is. It's hard work.
Hard work. Yeah. This seminar was the 4th international field seminar conducted as part of the initiative over the past 12 years, and the first one I've been to. Have you done any of the other ones?
I have not had a chance to go on any of the other ones. This was my first too.
This is first, so that was really fun. As part of the program, Maham developed a project examining journalism and media in Morocco and Tunisia, exploring how news, storytelling, and public discourse shape societies and cultures. And I'm hoping I got that right. Maham, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're too far from the mic, and you should know better than that.
I know. I keep wanting to lean back. Okay, this is...
Yeah, you need to move forwards and be
all right
on camera. So, before we talk about your project, and I do this to all the guests, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you into journalism, media, and ultimately teaching I Cannot Talk today?
So actually, interestingly, I was thinking about this, and coincidentally, it was a trip to Egypt, the Middle East, and Jordan that made me, confirmed for me that I wanted to be a journalist. So I had graduated from Northwestern in communication, and I did a bunch of different jobs. I was working as communication jobs are vague, so you're out there as an entry level, and I knew that wasn't going to be it for me. I thought I was going to be a speech consultant, but then the 2008 economy hit, and it was like the first luxury item to go off corporations, So I knew I needed to figure out what was next for me. And while I had time to kill in figuring that out, like where I was going to go to grad school and things like that, I went on a trip with this group called the Civilizations Exchange and Cooperation Foundation, and they were working with the State Department to have this exchange of professionals who would speak to young people in college. And, I think looking back at it was a little bit of a PR stint for Americans to kind of get out there after 9/11 and things like that. But I was fascinated with the program. We got to meet so many cool people while we were on the trip. So I got to meet the Coptic Pope and the head of the Islamic University there and the Jordanian Royal Court. So we were like a delegation. And I loved every moment of it. I was like, this is who I was supposed to be. So I thought about going into foreign service, but there were a lot of reasons I didn't.
Well, it's a process. I looked into the foreign service, and it is a huge process.
Yeah.
It is quite the vetting that they do to get people into that.
Yeah.
And then you never know. Every foreign service period depends on who the president is going to be.
Yeah.
And how
they politically charged, right?
Yeah, it's very politically charged.
And so I think I had to really sit down with what did I love about the travel component?
Yeah.
What was it? And it's really learning about people and culture and communities and how perceptions are shaped all over the world about the other, right? So it was the human spirit that fascinated me, and I'm a storyteller naturally. I just, if you look at my videos when I was a kid, I'm on a home video at 9 years old telling a story in the camera when no one asked me to, but I'm telling it, So it was something that was natural to me. And I'm like, how do I make a career out of this? And of course, I'm like, journalism, right? So I went and got my master's in journalism from DePaul, and then worked as a freelancer, worked in the field, worked for WBZ, which is all storytelling, radio, talk radio, and all of those things. And then I had a child, and I had to figure out some, more stable options. And a job opened up at Harper that was journalism related, and someone joked to me in an email. They sent me the job and said, it's like someone took your resume and created a job opening. And I was like, oh my God, it really is. It's like someone who teaches, someone who has journalism, real world experience, and all of these things. And lo and behold, it was a good fit. So I'm here now.
That's awesome. And so undergrad in communication, master's degree in journalism. So I'm just kind of laying out for students who may be listening to this so they know the different paths that you can have with a communication degree, because I think people think like, oh, communication, like you said, kind of general, but there's so many different paths that you can take with communication. And it's a really important degree to have. So you participated in the International Field Seminar. So we had 10 months of professional development. So I was participating in that too, through the Global Region of Focus initiatives. What motivated you to even apply for this program?
Well, truthfully,
because we wanted to go on a trip.
No, it's not even just go on a trip. But again, I love all things culture. I teach intercultural communication here at Harper College. When we started offering it, it was a required class. Like, the people who built it were like, Maham has to teach this. They just knew this about me because I am a traveler. I've been to over 25 countries in my life. And it's my happy place, right? So there wasn't gonna be an opportunity here at Harper that I wasn't gonna take advantage of in traveling. But it's a little bit deeper and more personal about that. You know, there's a lot happening in our country and in the world right now, and there's so much anti-everything, right?
Yes.
Like anti-Semitism, anti-Islamic rhetoric, liberal, anti-Republican. There's just so much like discussion of how bad the other is and it's disturbing on a level that I have not really been familiar with in a long time, right? Like after 9/11, it was rampant, but that made sense. We just had this terrorist attack, right? But now I'm seeing it on a deeply personal level in my classes towards me from people who think they can treat me a certain way, say things. I won't get into too many specifics, but it's painful. And when I heard the region they were focusing on, I knew this wasn't going to be a conversation just about the countries, that you can't have a conversation about North Africa without a conversation on Islam, right? Because it's heavily populated. That's the religion. It's the second largest religion in the world. And so I thought, this is a good time for us to be having this conversation, because if it's happening to me as someone who might be perceived as a Muslim professor, how are my colleagues even handling things that they hear? How do they address it? And so I thought, God, this is really a moment for us to check in and see how they're feeling and how we can help learn about this identity group also that is greatly misunderstood, I think, greatly misunderstood in a lot of ways. So in that sense, I really wanted to be a part of this one for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how it all rolls out.
What would you think of our classes?
Well, I think
because we had so to give like a little background, we've had a lot of faculty from North Africa teaching us. So it wasn't that we just read a few things and talked about it. We literally had quite a bit of lecture and knowledge transfer from the faculty in Morocco. I don't think we had anybody from Tunisia, but I think we had a lot of faculty from Morocco telling us about the history of the region, the different perspectives of the region, like all the history kind of from beginning up until now, so to speak, and all the things that have happened, and not necessarily in like a chronological order. We kind of went to different things and talked about empires. We talked about the beginning of how Muhammad became a prophet and all of that. So it was really interesting stories. But how did you feel in class?
Well, organically, I was happy that, and this is going to sound crazy, I think a lot of people came out of that course a little bit more confused about what is the agreed upon kind of Islam in the region. And I think I think the greatest takeaway we probably had is that it's not monolithic, it's not conformed.
Right.
There is so much complexity. And so the fact that we came out really not having a thorough understanding of any one identity in particular, but really like it's not how we like to lump the Islamic
Right.
world, right? It's so different from country to country. The differences in Morocco were
Yeah.
palpable than in Tunisia, right? And they're
Absolutely.
right, not too far from each other. And how over land we couldn't even go fly into Algeria, and just all of these like things we think they're all on the same side.
Right.
You know?
Well, people lump, like they say,
everybody groups.
this is the, that area. And it was really.
The Middle East, like that's
Right, it's-
everything is just the Middle East.
Which we're not supposed to call it the Middle East anymore.
I
remember?
know, and but I think like I was happy about that kind of confusion because that's truth.
Yeah.
We're not going to figure out complex people in a year or even 2 years. It could take a lifetime, just like you cannot lump Americans into a group, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of reflection there for me, even what I thought I knew about, let's say, Muslims in general in my own life, just having grown up in that sort of tradition. All checked, all questioned, all challenged, right? Perceptions. So it was so good to check in. I thought the class did a good job of giving us a lot of different perspectives. I also think we learned a lot about pedagogy,
Yeah.
as teachers, as educators, we do not teach so much in the way that we were taught in this
Yes.
course. And that is
Or in
definitely
the
cultural.
past.
Yeah. We taught like this in the past for sure.
Well, I always say, and I've said this on this program, when I started out as faculty, I look back and I go, oh my God, those poor students. But I was teaching how I was taught. And then developed from there by talking to other people, seeing what other faculty are doing. And I can honestly say, and I don't know if this is true in the universities, but definitely at Harper, and I think at other community colleges, they're not teaching that way. This sage on stage lecture.
Yeah.
Here's all the information. We have a lot more discourse. We have a lot more activities. We do things together to learn instead of this passing of information. And I also want students to realize that, because I think some of them come into class thinking, I just have to sit back and listen. No. Not even in an online class.
Yeah.
Not sitting back. You're going to be doing stuff.
Yeah.
You need to do things. And that was, it was interesting. And I was kind of the same way of, it was interesting information, but the delivery and how we were taught was different.
Well, and that's the thing, right? We were, because they were on WebEx and they were from across the world, and they are lecturing to us about the readings and all of those things, which is, like you said, is how we were taught. It really made me appreciate how important it is for us to think about how people learn and how you maintain a discussion and how you open and pause for questions and so again, organic takeaway was man, I have to make sure, because today, if I as an adult can only hold my attention span for 25, 30 minutes of actual content, and then I start to lose it, right? What are my poor students going through?
Right.
So I better make sure I never touch that,
Yeah.
So in teaching itself, and I think a lot of the world is still learning that way but here's the thing, that kind of learning was harder, but brains had to exercise more. So those people retain more information.
Right.
And we work so hard to make sure it's easier for students to retain now that I think they have to work less.
Right.
So there's an interesting resistance, right? Both ways. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so before traveling to Morocco and Tunisia, and that you kind of touched on this, what expectations or assumptions did you have about the region?
I actually didn't have any about the region, because I know not to understand that it's going to be, I don't know anything until I go.
Right.
And again, I've been in the Middle East quite a bit, so I didn't have any kind of ambiguity about what would happen or what would be there. I was more, I was worried about my assumptions about my colleagues who were going with me. In all honesty, I was more concerned about how a group of 14 people would interact with a culture that is very different.
Yeah.
And that's the truth, right? And there were moments where they acted exactly how I might suspected. We can be very American, we can be very ethnocentric, and I teach this in intercultural about checking those biases we have about my way is the right way, and everything I do is gonna be compared to what I think is right. Instead of like, wow, this entire portion of the world, large country, has been doing it like this for a long time, and they have not fallen off the face of the earth,
That's
and
right.
in fact, they're thriving and striving in different ways that we aren't, So there is that component. But it's also really a learning process for all of us.
Yeah. And I was actually surprised. And I think it's because I've never experienced it, even though I've lived in authoritarian regimes, right? I've never experienced a royal. So being in Morocco and having a king and like the way that...
Not even in London?
Well, but they haven't had, the king doesn't rule, right? Like there's a queen and whatever, it's just for pomp and circumstance, right? Like there's very little impact from that person. There's not, it's not like what the king says goes and whatever. And that was how it was kind of in Morocco. And I was like, that's different. And I also thought it was interesting in Tunisia that they are now a democracy per se, right, or have that established politically, but they still, the population kind of still longs for some authoritarian type leadership. And it's interesting to me because when Russia invaded Ukraine and Putin, put his fist down and kind of started putting kids, who were protesting in jail. And I saw that whole population fall back into being like the Soviet Union used to be and being afraid of, being listened to on the phone, being afraid of what they're saying, just all of that. I kind of thought like, really? Like after all this time? And I now realize like people, like it's very different. It takes a really, 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 really long time to change culture and people's mindsets. And we think like, oh, well, Tunisia now has a democratic government. And it was like, well, yeah, but, they kind of still treat it a little bit, like they treat those politicians still a little bit more like potentially like royals, not totally, not as much. So it's changing, but I just found that interesting. Like being in that whole concept of having a royal. Like I've never had that before.
A monarch in place.
A monarch in place who kind of dictates, does everything, decides, what's going to happen in the country. That was just really
Well, they have a
interesting.
parliament too, but obviously the monarchy is overseeing and has a lot of power still.
It has a lot of
But they do
power.
have a parliament that handles like the day-to-day legislation and
Right.
things like that. I think what I wasn't surprised by the monarchy because we see that a lot again in Arab and Muslim traditions. And again, you're also looking at a country that's struggling with coming out of being decolonized, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a different structure, a different force in place, and then that leaves, and now you're like trying to reestablish what your culture is. There's going to be that kind of. I think we're seeing that like in Tunisia, where they're like, all right, we are this democracy. Here's what we learned, but there's also, like you said, this longing of like, but who's going to make the decision? Wait, me?
Right.
All of us.
I think that's the issue, right?
Yeah.
Is like, well, why am I going to be the one making it? It's hard to have a voice.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, and a lot of the educated people, like we saw this in both countries, leave, right?
Yes.
They go to Europe to work, they go.
Absolutely.
So the opportunities are not there. And so when your best and the brightest are leaving the country, then you're left with a lot of people making decisions who don't necessarily have the literacy and the education. So there's, and we see that in a lot of developing nations too, right? So it's tricky. It's Turkey for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't surprise me that there was a monarch. What surprised me about it was how much in Morocco they like him. They love the monarch.
They love the monarch.
Yeah, I mean, they're so loyal. Everywhere we went, there was this photo of him. And I know that that's kind of like probably like, a formality too.
Right.
But when we spoke to people, they were like, no, he's great. And later, towards the end of our trip, when I found out Hajar, one of our guides, she finally told me, and she told me, I think on camera, so I think I can share this, that her family is related to the royal family. And so she has the same last name as the monarch. And so that does get her some clout in places and things like that. But she's scared to share that with people. But, she was like, it was funny. She was like, yeah, they've changed so much. And I'm like, oh, does that come with perks? I was asking her, and she's like, well, his father, the monarch before him, my dad, who is related to the royal court, could put a sticker on his car, and that would make sure he never gets pulled over. All of these like kind of perks.
Yeah.
If you are, and they used to get a stipend from the royal court, like a financial one, if you're related, you're of the royal family. And this new son came in, the new monarch came in. God help me, I am not going to remember anyone's names. There were so many names we learned. But he came in and he was like, enough of that nepotism. So he took away those luxuries, like everybody's equal. And we're like, as an American, I'm like, that's really incredible.
Right?
Wow, I'm impressed. And she was like, yeah, it sucks. She's like, I don't get royal perks anymore. So it's so interesting that, and I think that's why she was also really concerned about how her parents see her and how she behaves, depending on where she is. So that was interesting to me. That was a surprising component.
Yeah. So as part of this Global Focus initiative, you developed a project focused on journalism. Can you tell us about your project and what you were doing and kind of what you're trying to get out of that?
Yeah. So my project that I created in coursework before we went on the trip was this thing. I'm creating a podcast for my students to create episodes for, and it's called the Globalize podcast. And so I piloted it this semester, and I asked students to take a global topic, right? Like something that connects us, because I think a lot of things are missing from the student repertoire right now, right? Like we have forgotten how to ask questions and have conversations that are productive, right? As a journalist, an interview can be so powerful when you start with good inquiry, right? And I don't think students are.
I feel judged right now.
No, these are all really good questions. This was great, but I think. Establishing common ground on top of that. Again, we are seeing so much otherism in culture right now, and us versus them. And it's terrible because it's going to destroy us as a society. But if we can relate on a common ground again and recognize in each other what is almost exactly the same in terms of spirit and the need for survival and preservation and safety and all of those things. So I want students to find a topic that would force them to interview, research, explore, right? So one of the things we did is we in class watched that documentary on Morocco and that like revolution.
Right.
And we're seeing a lot of protest revolution in our own country. And I wonder if some of that was influenced through the Arab Spring, right? So I I have them watch that. They're going to watch that, and then we hold like a discussion in class, and I ask them questions, and we model like if this was a podcast episode, how would it go if we were talking about these things? What can you relate to? What resonates with you?
Yeah.
What do you feel like judging? Right, because that's honest too. Like what makes you uncomfortable about this? So I had students have a wide range of topics. Is really cool. One student picked like Australia's ban on Kanye, right? And then we got into that conversation about anti-Semitism and cancel culture and how do you hold artists accountable? And it went all over the place. It was brilliant. We talked about Japan's unwillingness to let go of like cassette tapes and CD-ROMs and floppy disks because of this generational gap, which is so fascinating to me. One episode is
they're all coming back, you know. It's all
I'm sure.
coming back.
It's our record player, right? Like it is our VHS tapes. If those are ever valuable, I'll be rich because I never threw mine out. So And then we talked about the incredible pressure in Korea on students for, like, they have this exam date that the whole country prepares for, insane.
Yep.
So I had students, they phoned in friends from Korea to talk about it. So we're learning journalism, we're learning conversation building that is productive, learning through that, like social media content creation.
Yeah.
And then they're also learning about other cultures in a way that's hopefully fun and interesting, and starts the conversation. I just don't want ever the doors to close on that conversation.
Right.
And that hopefully leads them down rabbit holes in which they learn. Right? So that's the project. While I was in Morocco and Tunisia, you saw me in all random places interviewing different people about their relationship with the news. So we're also watching, right? In my classroom, my journalism enrollment is down. It's down all over the country, right? History teaches us that there's always been this relationship with the media that is distrusting and then completely trusting. You know, we've had the fake news generation, the yellow journalism, and then we revived our faith and hope in what journalism was, and it was this watchdog. But in our modern times, and I'm greatly simplifying here, but in modern times, we're really watching the deterioration once again of that trust. It used to be like, well, right-wing Fox News, right? But it's just as bad on the liberal side. We study the bias, right? And in a good way, our students are understanding the power of conglomeration, controlling the narrative. Is journalism really free? Or is it owned now? Is it controlled?
Yeah.
And so I really, again, finding that common ground, this is newer to us. You know, in our generation, we're like, what is going on with our media? But countries have been dealing with a controlled, biased, government-owned media for a long time. The monarch doesn't like it. You can't say that, or they will destroy your life. And in this administration, I think we're watching a little bit of that kind of battle with journalists who are asking questions and they don't like the question. You see Carolyn Levitt and people who are like, if you don't like the question, they straight up insult the journalist, which is so like
childish.
Well, and it's what our parents left. And as an immigrant, this is what the kind of nonsense my parents left behind because they valued a free press, you know. So it's interesting, and I thought, well, what if I could interview people in those countries to ask about their trust with the news and how they reconcile that and how do they work around it when they need information? Do they think a press can be free and things like that? So again, having interesting conversations about your press versus my press, or like what's our common ground here?
Right.
So that was me interviewing different people, and I definitely learned that they are struggling. They're struggling with the exact same things that we are struggling with here.
So what are you going to do with all that?
So I think some of it, and I have to figure that out because I change my mind every day about how I want to present it.
I've been trying to figure out if I'm changing my mind about my project too. So
no, it happens, right? Which means we're actually in the right thinking frame. That's what I tell my students. When you can't decide, it's because you've got too many good ideas.
Right.
And so I am going to use some of those as teaching tools, just having show and then have students reflect on that and host discussions around it. I might model a podcast episode on this inquiry of distrust with the media and how do we resolve it, and then have those sound bites in there. So I'm thinking about doing both of those things.
Yeah, I find that very interesting. And, you know, I find, again, going back to this, like, the same thing that we learned in Tunisia, you know, about like the desire for somebody else to make decisions. You know, my family came from, you know, totally controlled propaganda machine, right? And I find it kind of funny that I kind of question, I think, but I was younger and I was raised here more than I was over there. But I see my mother particular, I mean my dad too or whatever, and my parents' friends or whatever, the generation that brought us here, fall back into this like picking the one side and trusting the propaganda that's coming out. And I'm just like, how do you, like, you left that what you realized all that, but it's so easy to, again, it's so easy to fall back to your past culture, your past whatever. And troubles me how easy it is to go back and how people long for that, and there's nostalgia. I think not necessarily outwardly. Nobody's going to say like, "Oh yeah, I like the propaganda," right? But I think they
well, there's comfort in the echo chamber,
right? They find comfort in that stuff that they never really liked in the first place that made them leave, and they're back into it. And this is what I feel like, like when he was talking to Nisha, I'm like, I totally get that. Like people fall into that comfort level of, like, and then also it's
lead
not
us.
me.
Tell
lead
us
us.
what to
Tell
think.
us. Tell us what to think. Tell us what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm just like, I understand it, but then I'm also like, come on, stand up for yourselves.
Yeah. And
like,
that was
make
actually
choices,
the takeaway, right? All around in class, it's the takeaway, and we were having those takeaways over there, which is how they deal with it is like when no one's allowed to report on the king in Morocco.
Right.
So he went through this divorce, and there was speculation about why he got divorced. Nobody was allowed to touch the story in Morocco. So with one of the journalists that I interviewed, she was like, it was hilarious. I said, so how did you guys come to find out about what was going on with the king? And she said, it was a Parisian newspaper, and it was Parisian reporters who dug and dig and didn't have the same consequences that we would have.
Right.
And so it was a French newspaper that published the story and found out, right? So what does that tell you? Like, even when you're in a ecosystem of media that's stuck, don't just try, go abroad, zoom out, and see what the rest of the world is reporting, that the different perspectives. And in America, I think the greatest danger is that we are like, I'm just going to watch CBS. I'm just going to watch Fox.
I know,
I'm just going to watch CNN. And it is the greatest detriment to our knowledge base.
And I will add to that, just because I have it on my radio. It's also the same thing with public radio. Like people think like, oh, that's real news, and I will tell you it's not. It's also biased. All of it is biased, and you have to figure out what that bias is and what you like and what you don't like and what you believe, right? But don't assume that everybody is just giving you news.
Well, the idea, and we talk about this in my mass communication class, the idea that there could be no bias is a myth.
Right.
Because bias just means preference.
Right.
And so anything that is created by human beings, including artificial intelligence, is going to have a bias to it, right? And that is the preference with which you tell a story.
Right.
And so I always tell my students, if you have a bias, it's really important to go listen to the other side with the other bias. Read the stuff from if you slant left, read left, and you slant right, read right. But then read everything in the middle. Read or find out, absorb everything. Understand what is propaganda. Understand what is trying to invoke an emotional dopamine hit in you. Filter and understand what the tidbits of facts are that you need to keep in mind, right? If your taxes are going up, don't worry about the noise that's telling you how you're supposed to feel about it and whether it's right or wrong. Know that your taxes are going up and you have to financially plan for it, right? And it's sad that that's what news has come to in a really dangerous way. I think we've had times in our history where we were way better about just saying, your taxes are going up,
Well, now it's your taxes are going up and here's who to blame.
Exactly.
And, can we step
Who's
back?
worse?
Who's right? And this is the reason, and this is who you blame, and this is what you need to do about it. And it's kind of like, well, can we look at all sides and figure out what is actually happening and why taxes might be going up?
Yeah.
Or not going up.
Yeah.
By the way, gas prices dropped. I was like, darn it, I should have waited a couple of days to fill up my car. All these politics.
I know.
How did you?
We jumped a lot of these questions.
We did, and what do you think? There's a difference between the two countries and how they do journalism. What do you think, between Morocco and Tunisia, what was your kind of impression of their, because you talked to people in both, and how do they feel about?
So in Tunisia, I really only got to talk to one person who was one of our guys. It was Hatem.
Yeah.
And Hatem currently works in the media.
Right.
And so
for 46 years, so you got to give that.
Yeah. And he's what I would call the public radio guy over there. He's got a cultural program.
Right.
But I challenged Hatem on this so many. He refused to say anything negative about the media and the
Right.
press there. And but I finally did get him to admit, because I'm like, is it really a free press? And he says, no press is ever really free. And there's wisdom in there. He's like, no press is ever free. He's like, not the American press, not the British press. No press is really free because there will always be social consequence, even when you speak the truth, right? So there's something deep and profound about that. Nothing new, but profound nonetheless, right? Like, in Morocco, I spoke to a female journalist. She talked a lot about just like you could develop a reputation for being truthful and honest, and then you say something about the king that's too close to home or too critical, and all of a sudden your life starts to go to heck, right? Like it's ruining, things are becoming difficult for you, and everyone understands how that happens and why it's happening. She also felt like there was a lot of sexual harassment as a young woman. I said, oh, yeah, well, we have that too, right? Again, that's a universal problem that women face. And so there is more danger, I think, in Morocco. And I think in Tunisia, again, because they're more democratic and there's like unions and there's a lot more of that, like, effect of we the people. I think that they are better in their journalism. There's a couple independent newspapers and things like that that the people trust. But both countries are like, yeah, but everyone's dying because of social media. That was the the final conclusion. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, I get that. I asked our guide, Hatma, about, because I said, you tell us some political things. I'm like, when you do your program, do you talk about that kind of stuff when you do your cultural program? And he kind of said no. Ultimately, the answer was no. I don't do that. I just talk about culture.
He was really careful.
He was
really,
very
really careful. And I think and he's older, right?
Yeah.
The interviews that I did with the younger people in Morocco were way more honest, but they didn't want their face on the camera.
Yeah.
When we went to, that was in Fez, in Morocco, and we went to the university with the translation university, and most of them didn't want to be on the camera because they're like, so there's that fear of like, if I say the wrong thing, I will be held accountable. Here's the funny thing I noticed with the students I did interview, they all want to be journalists for sports. And that is exactly what happens here in my classes. Everybody wants to be a sports reporter. Like, that's it.
Right.
I want to be at the World Cup.
I know, exactly. All right, well, we're going to have to wrap up, so I'm going to do some quick fire questions for you. Moroccan mint tea or coffee from anywhere, wherever you want?
Moroccan mint tea, never coffee in Morocco.
I 100% agree. Oh my God, it was awful. Yeah. And I will tell you, the reason I think that coffee in Morocco and Tunisia, kind of the same, is because of the Frenchies, and Frenchies do not know how to do coffee, and they were the colonizers. Italians know how to do coffee. French is like, I'm like, Italy's right next to you.
But they also have this incredible tea that like hits the spot.
Oh, I know. Yeah. The tea was amazing. Oh, it was so good. Everywhere, like Moroccan mint tea. I've made it now. I bought mint. And I had green tea, and I made the Moroccan mint tea. I mean, it's not as good, but as close as I can get. I did.
Okay, awesome.
I did the whole pour, so you
I
can
expect
get
an invitation.
Yes, so it was.
I have been looking up recipes on how to make the lamb tagine with the prunes because that changed my life.
Yeah. So, Mediterranean coast or Sahara Desert, because we got to see both.
I will always be a Mediterranean coast girl.
Yeah,
hands down.
Yeah,
I like the water.
I 100% agree with you, but that Sahara experience was amazing.
Yeah.
That was my favorite day, I think, of going to the Sahara
and the chocolate eggs and like eating in the dunes and that.
Yes,
restaurant. That was really
in the caves.
That was a first for me.
Yeah, that was, and just like that entrepreneurial woman who has her husband working for her, who has her daughter working for her, and did all of that. That was amazing. But we'll talk about that experience later. But and just being in the desert and hugging a camel and just like all of that was like incredible. All right, my favorite question: Morocco or Tunisia?
I really thought about this, and there were so many things I loved about Tunisia and so many things I loved about Morocco. But if I was going to go back to a country again, I would go back to Morocco.
I'm like Tunisia girl now.
Yeah, but I loved the ancient components of Morocco that like hold on to history in some way and like remind you and just like how much there are things I didn't care for either, but I do love you know,
I'll take the Moroccan food any day.
yeah, I liked the food and I'm a foodie.
And you know what? They were making fun of us, right? Because they knew we were going to Tunisia. And they're like, yeah, we'll see how you like the food over there. And I was like, all right, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, yeah.
It was good.
Not that Tunisia food was
Tunisian
bad.
couscous. I liked Tunisian couscous better than Moroccan couscous. Sorry, Morocco. But I loved Moroccan tagine, and nothing can touch that.
Oh, yeah. Moroccan
And harissa.
food
Oh,
was,
my gosh.
yeah.
And the tea.
And the eggplant. Oh, my God.
I do want to, can I share that? I wanted to, because I like talked so long, but I do want to share my favorite moment from the trip.
Yes.
One of my favorite moments, because this is going to be important for my intercultural class if they listen to this podcast. It was the moment Hajar, our Moroccan guide, confessed to us that she thought we all hated each other, that we were just
Oh, my God.
like,
She was so funny.
she thought, well, was she funny or were we funny? Because she just thought we were angry Americans who were mean and hated each other. She was scared of some of us. She confessed that to me. And it all turns out it's because sarcasm doesn't
Oh,
really
my God,
translate.
right?
So
It
we
was
had
so
to sit
funny.
down with her for an hour and explain the idea of sarcasm and that we really are friends and this is why we talk to each other this way and we don't really
And we
mean
make
literally what we're
fun
saying.
of each other in
the
like
tone.
playful way.
Yeah,
and
we're
she
not actually
thought we
fighting.
were really like saying things, and it was just so funny. And then, like there are moments like we'd say something, and I look at her and go, "That's sarcasm joke." You have to learn. And after a while, she started saying, "Yes, she would say, okay, that was sarcasm."
Yes,
Like,
and she was like, "That was sarcasm, right?" Yeah, it was so funny, and that was probably one of my favorite moments.
Yeah,
is
she
like
was
that
so
cultural
cute. Yeah.
moment where we were all like, "Wow, there is this difference," and had to translate. And
then I think about us in class, but that's a totally different conversation. But like, can you imagine, like I'm trying to be sarcastic in class and there's somebody from a different culture who doesn't even get that. And then
I've had to check myself. Now I have
Yeah.
to explain sarcasm. I do
Yeah.
for a lot of students who don't get it.
I now will have to because I do it all the time.
I know.
And I was just like, oh, she doesn't even understand that. She thinks we're for reals. All right. Well, I'm going to thank you for coming on the show. This was fantastic. And I'm hoping we get all of our colleagues from the trip to come. I want to do one for each one. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like and follow us on Instagram at Global Ed Unpacked. You can also watch the recorded show on YouTube channel at Global Education Unpacked and listen to the audio version of your favorite podcast platform once I put that on there. This episode was recorded at WHCM Radio, produced by Blue Bailey, and features theme music by DJ Double Dip. And this was, WHCM 88.3 FM in Palatine, Illinois, a broadcast station of Harper College and its Board of Trustees. All the thoughts and ideas were my own and Maham's and so, may not be the opinions of WHCM, Harper College, or the Board of Trustees. This episode, I already did that. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep exploring the world through education.
Yay.